Welcome, everyone. We'd like to go ahead and call to order the Planning Commission meeting of July 3rd, 2013. Can I get a roll call, please?
Chairman Jennifer Whitman.
Here.
Vice Chairman Bridget Peterson.
Here.
Commissioner Anthony Bianchi.
Here.
Commissioner Chad Fuller. Commissioner Joshua Ayler. Commissioner Christopher Sipple.
Present.
Commissioner Bob Steiger. Commissioner Kyle Paul.
Here.
Actually, I think we have a revised agenda with new members.
Commissioner David Cavaney.
Here.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Is Commissioner Ayler on the phone with us?
Madam Chair, he's not on yet. I'm sure we'll hear the beeping noise when
Okay.
he calls in.
Perfect. Thank you. Moving on to agenda item 11, approval of the agenda. Vice Chairman, do we have any changes proposed to the agenda?
Chairman, I haven't been given any changes for the agenda, so I move to approve it as is.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Who said second? Sipple? Okay, I have a motion to approve by Commissioner or Vice Chairman Peterson, second by Commissioner Sipple. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, moving on. Agenda item number 12, communication from citizens. At this time, members of the public may comment on matters not on the agenda. The Commission's response is limited to responding to criticism, asking staff to review a matter commented upon, or asking that a matter be put on a future agenda. So with that, do we have anybody here wishing to speak under those terms? Okay. Seeing none, we'll go ahead and move on to the public hearing consent portion of the agenda. The consent public hearing items will be heard at one public hearing. After the consent public hearing, these items may be approved by a single motion. At the request of a member of the Standing Commission or staff, an item may be removed from consent calendar and may be heard and acted upon separately. Other items on the agenda may be added to the consent public hearing and approved under a single motion. The agenda we have, or the item we have under that is agenda item number 13. It's UP 1306. It's a conditional use permit for approximately 0.63 acres of real property located south of the southeast corner of Gilbert and Ray Road to modify an existing wireless communication facility, which is a 61-foot high monopole in the neighborhood commercial zoning district. Do we have... Does staff, we'd like to open the public hearing. Does staff have a presentation?
One moment, please.
Do we have any public comment cards for this item? Thank you. I don't think that we have any for this particular item.
Thank you, Madam Chair. There's some technical difficulties. I prepared my presentation on the Microsoft and I downloaded on the iPad, but it's not showing the formatting well. And now the laptop doesn't want to work.
Oh, no. Okay.
But we'll get there. Anyway, I can start verbally. You have the presentation digitally, and it was working a few minutes ago. And this is the 150 acres northwest of the Warner.
No, we're on the consent agenda item.
Okay.
We're on the monopole.
Okay, no, I do not have that case to present.
It's on consent, so I don't think, unless we had somebody to speak or staff wanted to wish to say anything, or any of the commissioners had any issues with it, that we had any reason to discuss. Okay, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing, bring it back to the dais for a possible motion.
Chairman.
Vice Chairman.
I move to approve the consent agenda as presented this evening with just one item, UP 13-06.
Great. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, I have a motion by Vice Chairman Peterson, a second by Commissioner Bianchi. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, moving on to the public hearing non-consent portion of the agenda. The non-consent public hearing items will be heard at an individual public hearing and will be acted upon the commission by a separate motion. During the public hearings, anyone wishing to comment in support of or in opposition to a public hearing item may do so. If you wish to comment on a public hearing item, you must fill out a public comment form indicating the item number on which you wish to be heard. Once the public hearing is closed, there will be no further public comment unless requested by a member of the commission. So there's blue slips at the back of the room. If there's somebody who wishes to speak on an item, please fill this out and bring it up to somebody at the a representative here at the round table, and we'll make sure that we call you at an appropriate time. With that, we'll introduce case 14, which is GP 1304. It's a minor general plan amendment to change the land use classification of approximately 150 acres of real property located at the northwest corner of Warner and Higley Roads from 10 acres of public facility institutional and 139.5 acres of residential 3.5 to 5 to 93 acres of residential 2 to 3.5 and 56 acres of residential 3.5 to 5. Land use classification is shown on the exhibit, which is available in the planning department. We also have the companion zoning case as well, and we'll go ahead and invite, which is Z1307. And with that, we'll go ahead and open up the public hearing and welcome Maria Caraví.
Thank you, Madam Chair. While they are fixing this or letting us see it on the screen, I'm going to start stating that this item came to the Planning Commission last month, the study session. This 150 acres is part of the Morrison Big Master Plan. Planning work with the applicant all the way since pre-app, adjusting the compliance and conformance of the rezoning request to the general plan amendment minor change. So the Planning Commission did not have any major issues or questions for staff, neither do staff has any major items of concern. And we have reviewed all the previous ordinances, and in essence, what this proposal is doing is reducing slightly the density. One of the exhibits that you have in your packet shows the current general plan land use designations, classifications at that corner, which right now includes just one designation, one classification, and that is 3.5 to 5. The commercial corner that will remain is not part of this application, and the school site, 10 acres, that was originally in 1999 when this master plan was established, was identified for that location. The school has issued a letter that is in the files by the superintendent, that the assistant superintendent addressed to the applicant that they are not interested in a school site at that particular location. So the minor general plan amendment consists in changing creating a new land use classification of approximately 90 acres with a lower density, 2 to 3.5, and reducing the 3.5 to 5 to 50-something acres to make up the 150. So that is, in essence, the general plan amendment minor. The rezoning also changes zoning districts. In what sense? They change it, adjusting the boundaries. There is a big portion of to the north abutting the Circle G development, which is a low-density residential SF15, that remains untouched and unchanged. Then we have the lower density and the zoning districts that reflect larger lots to the west and toward the frontage on Warner Road, next to the Greenfield Acres development. That is an SF7, large lots to the west with single-story homes, a gated community. The smaller lots, the SF6s, will be fronting and facing Higley Road as well as Record Road. In addition to these boundaries adjustments, we have a number of deviations. Not significant, because actually the applicant is requesting to enlarge the depth of all the lots across SF8s, SF7s, and SF6s. The other amendment is to reduce the width of the SF7 lots from the Land Development Code and also from the original Ordinance 1329. They're reducing it by 5 feet. However, the lots are deeper. And lastly, they are requesting the 5% increase in the percentage of the lot coverage, increase it by 5% in all the districts proposed SF6, SF7, and SF8. With regards to this last item, the applicant would like to clarify what they are requesting. They don't want to, staff's position on this item is to observe and use to their benefit the recently text amendment approved by council and in effect on July 6th of increasing 5%, but only for open air structures, and there's definitions about what constitutes open air structures. The applicant states that his preference is to have the 5% on the building footprint, but not to do double dipping. In other words, not to benefit from the already will be in place by the time we go to town council with this recommendation, not to use the 5% for open air structures. But, so those are the main items. I do have on the presentation that I would like to show do you have your, they were on this, they were on the thumb drive. And the presentation, the applicant, and this is not in your packet because the applicant submitted that to staff later. And let me see if I can connect to the iPad presentation. Doesn't accept the Microsoft. I mean, some things are off, but it will be better than nothing.
I worried about that too. What happens if something happened to our iPads and we're
Let me
without
do that.
anything? Just wanted to have the presentation.
Okay, so that's the site. Forget about these scribbles on the side. It was a really nice slide when I put it together. The streets, this is Warner, and this is Higley. Doesn't accept when you turn the direction of the streets or any inserts. So we have the existing land use designations, neighborhood commercial, not part of this request, the school site, and the residential 3525. That is the current land use classifications. This is the proposed 93 acres of a lower density, 2 to 3.5, and a 56, almost 57 acres of 3.5.5. This other exhibit shows the zoning designations. The parcel A to the north remains unchanged. Acres and boundaries are the same. Lots are larger in depth. Parcels B and C will have the larger lots adjacent to the single-family SF10, actually, SF10 single-story homes. And the smaller lots, SF6s, will be toward the street and a small window to Warner Road. These are the current zoning districts. Proposed districts with the development plan. We can see now the streets, the lots configuration, which are all north-south orientation, and the larger lots, as I said before, adjacent to the larger lots to the west. And That gives us also a good idea or good view of how the buffer, those green belts that characterize the Morrison Ranch Master Plan, are located in a manner that transition from the subdivision to the west. This one is more clear in the sense that gives us the green connectivity of the trails along the midsection line, and all the how the lots on the Greenfield subdivision to the west are going to be transitioning to a big space, green, then a street, and then a lot that is not going to be backing but siding onto their lots. This is the exhibit that actually Commissioner Ayler asked last time. He wanted to see in the SF7 60 by 25 how they will look on the floor, on the plot plan, and as well how the visual effect will be on the streetscape by having reduced lots by 5 feet narrower, but observing the setbacks that the LDC requires for the SF7. So this is what the applicant has provided for your view and evaluation, or any questions you may have. And I think this is another exhibit that the applicant provided that gives us the dimensions from the property line to the big, the different widths of the north-south green belt along the west boundary of the property. We have 103, and I think that is the narrowest green belt width to the street, to the property line of the lot that is going to be facing north-south. And on the lower graphic, we have the widest green belt, and that will be at 179 feet. So we feel that it's a good design, a good attempt to respond to any concerns the neighbors to the west may have. And in that regards, we received a few calls from neighbors wanting to know the configuration of the lots. Some concerns were why to hold a meeting today prior to the 4th of July. People will be on vacation. The other item that was mentioned was we're concerned that our existing wall may be compromised with the continuous watering of the green belt on our backyard. So none of those. I mean, we listened, we took note, and we have communicated that to the applicant, who has been contacting those property owners or open for any questions. And we just show this for clarification of information that I could not put on your staff report because I didn't have it available, but I think we're bringing to you the information that you needed at this study session. Staff maintains their position of support for the general plan amendment as well as the rezoning case. I'll be happy to answer any questions, and I'm pretty sure that the applicant wants to explain and clarify what their request is on the 5% in excess of the open air structures already approved by council.
Great, thank you, Ms. Cadavid. Any questions for staff? No? Okay, thank you. We'll go ahead and invite the applicant up, if you can give your name and town of residence.
My name is Scott Morrison, Gilbert, Arizona, for most of my 59 years. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak with you this evening about Morrison Ranch. This will be the next to the last single-family subdivision we'll be doing. So if in doubt what we're doing, please feel free to come out to the area of Higley and Elliott and see the built spaces that we have since about 1995 when we built Elliott Groves East. So we are continuing on with very, very much the same design and theme that we've been doing all the way. This site does take out the school site because the school district actually asked us to give them land for a bus barn facility east of here instead of at this school site, and that happened some time ago, and they no longer want the school site. Clarifying a couple things. We are asking for some deviations from side yard setbacks from our original ordinance 1198 that happened in 98 down to straight zoning of the LDC as it now is. That's what we're asking for. It's not anything less than that for setbacks in any direction. And then on the lot coverage, our request came up, and we're trying to cooperate with the builders who are indicating that they'll come in here. Our lot coverage request came before we were aware of this open space 5% that was coming along. We are requesting that we have the total lot coverage go up from 40 on am I going to say it right? 40 on two-story to 45 and 45 to 50 on one-story. But that would be the total, and we would have you step out the open space extra 5% that is about to be approved. You know that we require the builders to have the vast majority of homes in Morrison Ranch to have front porches, and then they virtually all have back porches. So it may in fact be that for 90% of the homes, the result will be exactly the same as this 5% open space. I'm not going to get the term right, but the 5% open air structures that is about to be approved. And therefore, if you say, no, what we want to approve instead is the straight lot coverage with that open space, I will not go screaming into the night. That will be okay. But the actual request is that we go to 45 and 50 with the stipulation that we don't use the open air structures on top of that. Is that clear? Is there anything that I can do to improve that?
Does that conclude your presentation at the moment?
Two other things, I guess.
Okay.
One is this area of the west edge. We have had owners in our neighborhood meeting be concerned about two-story houses. We think that the dimensions here indicate that that's not a concern. I will absolutely admit that the day this subdivision is built, the trees will not be the size that are described here, but in as short as 5 years they will be, and there really won't be any visual path from any windows to these houses. But in the meantime, it will be a minimum of 103 feet between lot lines and something closer to 150 feet wall to wall on the houses, and then in the most extreme case, 179 feet between lot lines. So we don't believe that's an issue. As to the back wall, certainly we will make every reasonable attempt to not impact that wall. I've heard from time to time that we have expansive soils in Arizona and in Gilbert, and so perhaps that's true. But we will put in a header, we will put in spray heads that spray only away from the wall, and we will have all main lines at least 8 feet away from the wall, so if there was even a main line failure, any potential flooding that came from that wouldn't be against that wall and cause it to fail. If there are other reasonable actions, we'd be glad to consider those as well. So we think the wall will be safe, and we think the two-story houses are not an issue, and those are the only issues I'm aware of that our plan might address. We have the same approximately 20% open space that Morrison Ranch is known for. We have the connectivity of the trail at the north edge. We'll go all the way across into the next project that we'll be talking about in study session into Lakeview Trail South and on across into Elliott Grove's Phase 1 and 2 that you've already approved. So that Central Trail space continues to be a feature since 1998. Now I'm done.
Thank you, Mr. Morrison. Any comments or questions for Mr. Morrison?
One thing, yeah.
No?
The only, the only question I have is, and it was brought up earlier, I was not part of the creation of this 5% additional open air issue, but I'm obviously enmeshed in it now. But it was mentioned earlier that it does take away the flexibility from the homeowner to ever at any point add, a pool ramada or any other personal intended feature like that. Does that concern the applicant at all, or, I mean?
Well, it's not a concern to Morrison Ranch. We think that the lots have gotten considerably deeper over the years, and we are providing, up to 135-foot depth in the extreme, in the SF10. But we think that there's option enough. Certainly, when you go to the limit, that you tend to hit that on the largest single-story house, and that house fills the lot more than any other, and that is a pretty popular design. And builders are trying to maximize that, and we have come up again. Essentially, we came up with the notion that our limit was the same as the town's limit. It's just going to be slightly different than actually measuring the open air structures deal if we get our way, and we will measure the open air structures if we go the way that the town is moving forward on most cases. I honestly think the outcome is going to be indistinguishable, because 80% of the houses will have front porches on them and back porches on them, and that's going to make up more than 5% of the total footprint of the house, and we'll be talking about the same thing.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Morrison. I do have a quick question for legal counsel. Staff had brought up, and the applicant brought up, the open air structures, and maybe if it was the commission's purview to stip against the ability to use the open air structure, and I just don't know if that's even possible, if it's not part of the request. And is the open air structure an automatic right? I can't remember if it has to be approved, they have to come back to us for approval, or if it's an automatic right. Do you recall?
I believe it's an automatic right.
Okay.
But you could modify that, just as you can modify setbacks, I believe. I would have to take a look.
So we could essentially, not that it's the commission's purview to do so, but just the question, we could stip to restrict this development from, if we approved the increase in the lot coverage and then denied them any future rights to use the open air structure on those lots?
Let me look.
Okay.
Before I give you an answer.
Yeah, I was a little concerned about that. Not that that's the commission's purview, obviously, but just the question before we even start to discuss it if it came up.
Okay, and by the way, it was already approved. It was approved on June 6th.
Just hasn't gone into effect.
Right.
Right.
It'd be effective July 6th or 7th.
I just didn't know if the applicant had to come back for approval of the open air structures as part of like any formal process, or if it was just a by right.
Right.
And
I
it's
think
by right.
By right.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Madam Chair, could I comment on that as well, please?
Commissioner Powell, sure.
When we reviewed the text and we developed the text for that open air structure, I think it's important for us to remember the intent. And the intent is because in the past, lots were so small that people really couldn't add amenities. They couldn't add recreational structures. They couldn't do those things. And so the town came up with this text in order to enable the homeowner to have that option. And I would be wary of allowing developers to automatically assume that right, just as we're discussing, because I think that violates the intent. And the intent was to enable the homeowners to have the option and not to grant an additional 5% of lot coverage automatically to builders. So I just would caution us to keep that in mind as we develop discussions on this.
Well, I think the open air structure is a code change that was made, and it doesn't differentiate between developer versus homeowner. So anybody can take advantage of that, and that's something that was part of the process. But as far as, I think there's two, in my mind at least, there's two different ways of looking at it. For the increased lot coverage, it's covered and usable square footage that isn't considered open air. So that would be extending the footprint of the home, the additional square footage, et cetera, in addition to the open-air structures, which are solely identified and used for open-air structures. So that they're, in my mind, two separate. They kind of commingle with each other in some terms, but I think they're, for our purposes, are pretty separate. But I don't think that we can differentiate between who gets to use the open-air structure once it's effective. It is just a use by right.
That's a good point. That's the conundrum. That's where you kind of have to guard the intent of certain things in the very beginning, because if we do strictly be held to the letter of the law on some of these things, which I can endorse, by the way, I think the letter of the law is there for a reason, but if we establish patterns going forward, then we take that option away from the homeowner in the future then too, because it's now absorbed. Good point.
Thank you. Okay, with that, we'll open up the, well, we've already opened up the public hearing, but is there anybody here wishing to speak on this matter? No cards? Okay, anything further that the applicant or staff wishes to add? Mr. Morrison?
I don't know if we have the flexibility to go to council still figuring out this lot coverage question. And if we do, then we can go forward here the next few weeks, figuring out the right way to do that and or what the council wants to do. But if we were hung up at this meeting because we weren't sure which way to do it, it would be our preference to go with the new plan rather than lose a month in the process of researching something.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Morrison. Staff have anything further to add? No?
No, Madam Chair. I
Okay.
completed my presentation.
Thank you. We'll go ahead and close the public hearing and bring it back to the dais for commissioner comment, discussion, possible motion. Commissioner Bianchi?
I guess for clarification, so if we talk about stipulation, are we stipulating that that additional 5% coverage increase would be for open-air structures per the ordinance? Is that what we're doing, or am I missing the intent?
I think that's up for discussion. I think what the applicant was saying.
Is agreeing to?
Well, I guess I took away two different perceptions from the applicant. One was that he'd like everything if it's our purview, and we'd like to give him it. But if we were hung up on the increase in lot coverage, then he was willing to accept the open air structure, which is already part of code. So I guess we would have to then deny the portion of the request for the increased lot coverage if we were to move in that direction. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I see the intent of where you're headed, but I think to give my preference to this discussion, it would be that we probably not set a precedence here right when it's about ready to be approved, and we probably stick with what we've established. And it sounds like the applicant can live with that. So I commend the applicant on all the other features that he described, particularly how to treat the adjacent property lines with the landscape setbacks and irrigation being set off. I think those are great ideals, and hope that that makes it all the way through the process.
Thank you.
So
Commissioner Powell?
one more attempt at clarifying this. Again, if we were to cast a vote on this, exactly what?
If you were to cast a vote today to approve it as provided in the staff report, it would allow the applicant to have an increase in lot coverage, and they would also be, by right, once the code goes into effect, to use the open air structures. So that, I mean, that they would be allowed to utilize both. Not that they would, but they would be, by right, allowed to use that. However, if it's a commission's purview, or if there's a question about lot coverage, then we could deny the portion, or recommend denial of the portion of the lot coverage increase requested by the applicant, and the applicant would then just utilize the open air structure provision in the code when it becomes in effect.
Okay. Thank you, Jen.
Does that make sense?
Thank you, Chair. Yes.
Somewhat? No?
Could I possibly speak into this one more time?
We closed the public hearings and brought it.
Perhaps not.
Yes.
Madam Chair, you do have the purview to bring back who you need to for conversation. Just open up the public hearing.
Okay, we'll reopen the public hearing then for you, Mr. Morrison.
Thank you. I think that have it all and what I heard you describe, Madam Chairman, it was not quite what we're after. I do not want any way to have 55% lot coverage of anything. So I would say the 45 and 50 with a stipulation, which sounded like it might be possible, that the open air, open structure rule not apply, so that the most that we would have is the 45 and the 50, all things concluded, whatever it was, or the straight 40 and 45 with the open air. But please, I don't want the right for the builders to come in and go with both of those on top of each other.
Now, just for clarification for my purposes, with the open air structure, you understand that it doesn't allow an increase in lot coverage for the usable area of the home or the livable area of the home.
Yes, I do. And
Okay.
because we are going to require front porches, that's why I think it's essentially going to come out to be the same thing.
Okay. I don't know if it pertains to front porches or if it's only in the rear.
What's else?
Open air structure?
Madam Chair, if you'd like, we can read or show you on screen, which only takes me a second to hook my iPad
That would be
up, and
fabulous.
would, help, if you just go give me a moment.
Absolutely, thank you.
Have we granted these deviations before throughout Morrison Ranch? I'm curious if we're consistent in that or if this is a new request. I'm wondering if the applicant
There's
might
been
know.
so many cases.
There is, but I'm wondering
I
if
think
this is
s-
consistent with what we've seen through Morrison Ranch throughout, or if this is a newer product or newer phase, that this is a new request.
Ms. Cadavid can answer that question for us in a minute.
Madam Chair, there has been other deviations in different areas of the Morrison Ranch, but this is the first time to request a 5% over the coverage in the code or in their ordinance, master ordinance, which also is the same as the code.
So this is the first time requested for the additional 5. Okay. I just wanted to be consistent with what we've done before. Okay.
Oh, that says attached patio. Okay. That's too small to read.
Zoom in.
The recently approved open-air ordinance with the 3 definitions are shown on the screen here. The open-air accessory structure, an open-air attached patio, and an open-air porch. So I think what the Morrison family is asking for is lot coverage that includes all of this and the principal structures.
Okay, this helps out a lot, I think.
So that's, that's our new definitions. I hope you can see them. But they do describe 3 types of open-air structures. And not only for the intent of having attached open air to the principal structure, but also detached.
Okay, perfect. This helps out a lot. Thank you very much. With that, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing and bring it back to the dais now that we have a little more information from the applicant and staff. With the direction provided by the applicant, if the applicant is comfortable with utilizing the open air structure code amendment that will be in effect in a couple of weeks, next week, it would be my preference that we maybe deny the portion of the request that the applicant is asking for related to the increase in lot coverage and let him utilize the code amendment that will be in effect shortly, because I'm not certain how and if we can legally restrict rights to by right uses in the code. So that would be, for discussion, just my personal preference. What do the other commissioners feel?
Chairman,
Vice Chairman Peterson?
I agree with everything that you just said. I think that it's an interesting situation because I'm sure that the Morrisons started this project as we were getting, or long before we started talking about this open air structure option. I just wanted to make sure that it was something that could be attached because, as Mr. Morrison stated, he could use it for front porches. And when we had our discussion, there were so many different options discussed that it could be an inch away, but it was an open air structure, and so on and so forth. So I'm comfortable with the open air structure option for Morrison Ranch in this case and taking away the request that they've made for the changes, or not agreeing to the changes.
Just for the lot coverage increase, right?
Right, just for the lot coverage increase, exactly. I think it makes sense to do it that way.
Any further thoughts? Commissioner Bianchi?
So is that providing the 5% just for the open air or granting them the additional 5%?
They
Just-
get the open air by right.
Right.
Once Saturday hits, because it's in effect as of July 6th. So
So it'd be removing, in essence, their request to increase the lot coverage.
we're just
As
not
part of this.
approving their
Yeah.
request
And
to.
keeping it at the 40 or 45%.
Correct, what it exists as today.
Yeah, I think that would be my preference too. I think for the points that Madam Chair made, as well as our two newer commissioners, which I agreed with about the intent, as well as, setting the precedent for something we're just starting out with. And as long as we're maintaining consistency, and this is the first request we've seen through Morrison Ranch, because that's what I'm saying. Historically, if this is the way they've done it, and we know the look and feel of Morrison Ranch, I wouldn't want to interrupt that. But with that being, I would be most comfortable with the straight 40 to 45%. With the 5% open air structure as well.
Don't-
Commissioner Powell?
I support what Commissioner Bianchi is saying, but I just want to add this one comment. Morrison Ranch has built a great product in the past, and it's been very attractive. It's been successful because it's been a quality product and with a very attractive environment around it. But the comment that I want to make is porches. When we talk about the portion of this open air language addressing porches, it wasn't there before, but yet there were porches built on the houses. So porches get built on the front porches get built on the houses regardless of whether we have this open air structure or not. They always have been in the past. And so I think the intent of this language here was to allow people who didn't have a house with a front porch to add a front porch. So with that in mind, Morrison Ranch can continue to build wonderful products, I think, with their front porches without necessarily having to step into this 5% as well. But the question that it comes up is suppose a custom home developer wanted to build a product that had detached features, covers around pools and things like that, then at that time they may very well want to exercise that right to go ahead and use some of that 5%. So it's there, I guess, for the builder to use. It really doesn't need kind of some further explanation, doesn't it, as we move forward on this?
Chairman, if I might, I think that was one of the things that we discussed when we discussed the open air structures was the fact that, actually, I think I may have even asked the question, was if it was available for developers to use, if they wanted to offer different products along with their homes in the construction process, and if it was available for residents to use and come back in after the product was built and say, now I'd like to add A, B, or C. So it's both. It covers everything.
And I think that's what it was for, was to allow developers to build detached structures that were attractive as part of their product, but not necessarily attached to their product at the time that they were building it.
Well, the way that it passed council, it looks like anything, all three are an option there, attached and detached.
Correct. Commissioner Cavany? No?
Well, I concur with the outline stated by you, Madam Chairman, and I just would commend also the rest of the proposals. I think they're all in line, and I think it's a wonderfully designed project. So.
Great. Okay, with that said, do we have somebody who would like to make a motion?
Oh, okay. How do we need to do this? Legal counsel? Are you special counsel now because we have Mr. Hamlin in the room?
Yes. I am now special.
Special.
The motion could just be moved to recommend with the deletion of the,
Lot coverage increase?
exactly, of the lot coverage increase.
Okay, and That's the second motion. The first one is for the general plan.
Right, correct.
Okay, so I will go ahead and recommend to the town council approval of GP 13-04, a minor general plan amendment to change the land use classification for approximately 150 acres of real property generally located at the northwest corner of Warner and Higley Roads from PFI and residential 3.5 to 5 dwelling units per acre land use classifications to residential 2 to 3.5 dwelling units per acre and residential 3.5 to 5 dwelling units per acre land use classifications.
Okay, with that, do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, I have a motion by Vice Chairman Peterson, second by Commissioner Cavaney. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, moving on to the zoning portion of the case.
So it just be items number 1 and 2, or we just maybe
So you would recommend the stipulations in the staff report, but deleting the lot coverage increase.
Thank you. Okay, just trying to make it all clear here. For my second motion, for the following reasons, the development proposal conforms to the intent of the general plan and can be coordinated with existing and planned development of the surrounding areas, and all required public notice and meetings have been held. Planning Commission moves to recommend approval to the Town Council for Z 13-07, a request to rezone approximately 150 acres of real property generally located at the northwest corners of Higley and Warner Roads, as stated in my last motion, with the stipulations provided in the staff report, deleting the lot coverage option,
Increase.
increase. Thank you.
Okay, do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, I have a motion by Vice Chairman Peterson, a second by Commissioner Powell. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. All right, moving on to agenda item number 16, case UP 1307, East Valley Patient Wellness Center. It's a conditional use permit for approximately 0.8 acres of real property located at 988 South 182nd Place, which is south and west of the southwest corner of Power and Warner Roads, to allow a medical marijuana dispensary in the light industrial zoning district subject to conditions. And with that, we'll invite Mr. Al Ward.
Chairman
Welcome.
Whitman, thank you, and members of the Planning Commission. As you mentioned, this is a use permit request for approval of the East Valley Patient Wellness Center, which is a medical marijuana facility. It's located in East Gilbert CHA. CHA stands for Community Health Analysis Area. There's two different CHAs within Gilbert. There's one in the West Gilbert for which a facility's already been approved. Now this is the one for the East Gilbert area. It's located at the southeast corner of Warner Road and Power Road, a little bit south and west of each of those areas. This is the location at this spot. Power Road on the east, Warner Road along the north side of the site. I would like to mention the CHA boundaries. There were some questions at the study session about those. The area in green is the CHA 77, again, Community Health Analysis Area. And I believe that the state actually provides one CHA statewide for each, I believe it's 10 drugstores or pharmacies. I believe my numbers are right on that. Here's a closer view of what that CHA is. Hunt Highway to the south. It lines up with Power Road on the east, essentially up and down Lindsay Road on the west side, and goes up to Baseline on the north side. It's approximately 59 square miles. Here's another picture of the site, a little bit closer in. The site is actually zoned light industrial district, and it is surrounded by either regional commercial or light industrial. Light industrial land use classifications in the general plan to the west and north, regional commercial to the south and east. The areas to the east and to the west are located within the county. They're county islands. This particular site is 0.8 acres in area. It's a request for a medical marijuana dispensary, and that would involve dispensing medical marijuana for people who have in possession Arizona Health Services cards, and they would have to be eligible people and have to have a recommendation from their doctor in order to receive a card. And there are a specific list of types of medical illnesses which would qualify you to receive a card. The facility itself is located centrally on the site. It's 182nd Place along the east boundary of the site. The address itself is 988 South 182nd Place. This is Nanelli Drive along the south side. This is the overall approximately 0.8 of an acre site. I just want to mention medical marijuana was approved by a voter mandate. It was either late 2010, early 2011. Following that approval statewide, the town of Gilbert authorized KZ 1105, that's the town of Gilbert medical marijuana ordinance, 2318. They looked quite carefully, the stakeholders and council, the founders, and the planning commission as well, on what would be suitable type of criteria in which to locate a medical marijuana facility. These were determined to be most appropriately located within the light or general industrial district. In addition to that, there's 15 specific criteria, and which is contained in your supplement. And also there has to be a security plan provided by each applicant. You're only allowed to have, statewide, you're only allowed to have one dispensary per CHA. And in the town of Gilbert, we have on page 3 of your report, there are separation distances to other medical marijuana dispensaries, hospitals, daycare, public and private parks, schools, and residential districts. This actual site meets all the criteria, the minimum separation distances, and it's actually 1,350 feet from the nearest residential area. As I mentioned, this site itself is surrounded by other industrial uses to the north and east. These were originally developed, platted and developed in the county. It's not our typical light industrial park that we'd see in other areas of the town. This one was pretty much developed on a grid pattern, straight plat, 1 to 2 acre lots more or less, and there were no parks dedicated as part of this. We did have a question previously at the Planning Commission at the June 5th study session on this item about did the earlier issues that arose on some of the previous applications, not this one, but some of the previous ones, deal with the definition of park. Actually, that definition was approved by an ordinance Z1114, and that specified that retention basins, areas used exclusively or primarily for retention basins, did not qualify for a park, and neither did general outdoor staff break areas. So it has to be meet the definition of private park or public park. As far as the operation of the facility, we have state requirements and local requirements. The building has to have a secured entryway, maximum of 1. There is a possibility of emergency exit for fire safety reasons as well. A maximum floor area allowed for a dispensary would be 3,000 square feet. This particular building is 1,536 and has a security plan, and which has been reviewed by the Gilbert Police Department with the applicant and has been found to be satisfactory at this point. So essentially we have an entry area at the southwest corner of the building, a waiting area, and then as each patient would identify themselves, give them, identify and show their card, their state card, they'd be taken to the back area to meet with a sales representative, and they'd be looking at different types of product, looking at their history, medical needs, answer any questions. They would receive the product at that point, and then the idea is to drive back home. I want to mention that there's no consumption, one of the requirements. There's no requirements there's no ability to consume this product within the building or anywhere in the site. This will not be grown at the site, even though the definition of dispensary would allow dispensing of the product or cultivation of it. But in this particular case, cultivation will occur in the Phoenix area and be delivered here. We had some other questions about how it's delivered and how much quantity. The applicant has provided some additional information. He's also here to speak on it. And I could just say that he indicated initially that there would never be more than a pound or 2 or 3 on the site at any given time. However, he might be able to clarify that. It would be delivered by truck in a package. These are professional staff. They're background checked. They're fingerprinted. And these are professional caregivers who are, knowledgeable in the subject. So with that, I'd be pleased to answer any questions. Staff is recommending approval. This does have to meet the use permit criteria. Does not adversely impact the, health and welfare and safety, et cetera. It has to comply with the general plan, land use code, state and federal requirements. This particular use is not a significant traffic generator. They, as I mentioned, professional caregiver staff, background checks. It is suitable, suitably and responsibly run, and it really is intended to operate similar to a commercial retail type of use. And I think that pretty much concludes my presentation. The applicant is here, and I'd be pleased to answer your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ward. Does the commission have any questions for Mr. Ward? Commissioner Cavaney?
Only having the benefit of the site plan or the floor plan, can you tell me, or do you know if this modular building that's proposed has a foundation to it? Does it have footings and so forth? Do you know anything about the setting on the site?
Commissioner Cavaney, yes, it's specifically going to be built for the site, moved onto the site. It is going through the design review process. It is at grade level, and I believe it's located on permanent foundation, possibly a slab, but I would have to consult further with the applicant on that matter. Perhaps he could address that.
My concern is that the regulations, land use regulations specifically state that it cannot be a temporary building. And I see modular, and there are temporary modular and there are permanent modular. And so that's my concern here is it a temporary structure construction, or is it of a permanent construction? So that's the first question. Yeah.
Commissioner Cavaney, this would be permanent construction. It's not a temporary construction. I believe the Design Review Board does recognize modular buildings as long as their exterior is designed to be compatible with the neighborhood, with adjacent surrounding buildings. So yes, even though it's built at a factory and brought in, it's still going to be permanently affixed to the property.
Okay, I'd want to make sure that were the case. I think the intent of that is to make sure they don't come and go very quickly and very easily. So, yeah. One other quick question, if I may. I noticed that I've read through this thing pretty thoroughly, and I noticed that there is a section that says in the regulations that they shall not sell merchandise other than medical marijuana, and then the response is that no sales of any merchandise will occur that is not approved for the use of and application of medical marijuana. I think I want to understand what the application of means.
Commissioner Cavaney, I believe with the other dispensary that we do have in Gilbert, that they can make different substances out of the product itself. There's a lotion and some tinctures and other things like that. So I think that they do have the ability to have other types of products. As far as how these are applied or what method, perhaps the applicant could give further clarification.
Well, and I wish I understand the full intent, but to me it sounds like they don't want them selling equipment and so forth that goes with that, and I think I just want to be assured that that's the case. It's just the product, and I would understand that lotions and so forth would fall within product only, but if there were other tools, and I'm not familiar with how those work, but that would be something I'd want to make sure we're good with. So yeah. That's all my questions.
Thank you. Any further questions for staff? Okay, thank you, Mr. Ward. Go ahead and invite the applicant up if you can give your name and city of residence.
Duke Rodriguez, Scottsdale. I represent the applicant, and Madam Chairman, members, as to the question as to what items would be sold at the dispensary, it will be strictly product. We're not allowed to sell other paraphernalia. There'll be no pipes, no other items. It is strictly the product and other related products, like you said, the lotion and so forth. It is strictly the medically related products. As to the nature of the building is a permanent modular building, will be set with piers, and it will be approved through design review, but it is a permanently to be forever or as long as possible to be located at that site. If we spent time showing you the exterior that we actually built beyond the modular, we built a facade around the entire building, so it's going to basically be locked in with a self-supporting structure that will also make it permanent. So it is a permanent modular building to be finished on site. Al did a really good job of giving you kind of a overview of how it operates, and I can tell you I probably can't add a lot more unless you have specific questions, but I can tell you we have received some calls, and I'd like to give you feedback on those calls so you understand as to the concerned citizens who indicated some concern as to the project. Obviously, there might be in some folks' mind an issue as to what kind of patients will be coming to this location, the level of patient volume. As Al pointed out to, everyone who comes to the site must have a medical card granted by the state. Currently, there are about 40,000 cards granted in the state who could potentially arrive at this site. But there are CHAWs, there are basically, at this point, 98 CHAWs that look like they will be functional potentially by August or fall of 2013. Of the CHAWs, you'd be interested to find out that there is definitely a need for this CHAW specifically in Gilbert. Gilbert holds 2 CHAWs, and this CHAW specifically is in the top 10 of total demand as to number of CHAW members in the state. And if you look at the types of patients gone statewide, the number 1 CHAW might surprise you. It's not the undesirable populations that some people might characterize. The number 1 CHAW is in Paradise Valley, followed by South and North Scottsdale, North Phoenix, Chandler, and Gilbert. So the demand is out there, and if I gave you kind of a macro anecdotal view of the kind of patients, because of HIPAA, we can't give you all the statistics, and certainly there's a certain level of confidentiality as to the patients when they arrive. But you can imagine that about 25 patients a day will be arriving at this site. Their average age will probably be over the age of 45, and they certainly will have been pre-qualified by a physician or a caregiver. They will be allowed to buy no more at any one time of 2.5 ounces in a 2-week period and no more than 5 ounces in a 30-day period. They will be monitored for their levels of consumption. Is there the potential? I've been asked the question about what about diversion of product. Obviously, there is always the potential for the diversion of a product like this, but it is no different than, for example, a pharmacy. Anytime somebody goes into a pharmacy and they buy a narcotic such as OxyContin, there is the potential for them to walk out and divert it. But I think this program, because of the compliance built in by the state, and the amount of checks and balances built in by the state, there's going to be, I think, potentially a very low level of non-compliance. There's a tremendous amount of compliance issues as to getting into the doorways. As Al pointed into, you walk into the lobby, you've got to check in, you have 2 forms of ID, you are cleared. You're not even allowed to enter into the area where the medication is until you've been cleared and properly checked. There will be cameras on site throughout the indoor facility. Every space within the building must be captured on film, both daylight and nighttime vision. If you have a business in this area and they've been concerned about undesirables coming into the area, will they then come to my property? And I think one citizen raised a proper question. They said, what happens if they come to your facility and they jump my fence and steal my stuff to buy more product? I can assure you there are cameras outside. The state requires that cameras be visible on all outside the building, and we capture all images. Potentially, I think we're going to enhance the level of security in the neighborhood. So generally, I think it's a product that there is demand for the Gilbert area. This is one of the larger areas in the state requiring a medical marijuana facility, and the dispensing will be limited strictly to medical marijuana.
Thank you, Mr. Rodriguez. Is there any questions for the applicant? Commissioner Bianchi.
I guess one of the questions, and I'll be careful not to stray too much on the use permit, so, and the facts of finding, but when you talked about the demographics and the amount of users and so forth, at a facility like this, when they do sell it, is it based off of, is it based off of income levels, or is it covered by insurance? I'm just wondering if it's a demographic things were the most popular ones that you had mentioned as far as clientele.
Madam Chairman, Commissioner Bianchi, there is an economic issue here, because the average price, for example, will normally be about 1/8 of an ounce at a time. So it's not a large purchase, but it's going to be around $60, $65. It is cash. At this time, it's not covered by insurance, but oftentimes it's patients who are using this as an alternative to another prescription medication. So the demographics are driven by those who can actually afford it.
Okay. And then the second question, actually, I think you touched upon it at the conclusion of yours, is one of the concerns that I've got is this being largely an industrial area. It's largely vacant, kind of void of adjacent users. What measures do you take that this potentially, since it's shielded from a lot of other uses, that the product can't be purchased and then maybe sold to a second party outside the facility? Because you had mentioned greatly about the internal cameras mentioned, but you're saying that there's also external surveillance as well, so that this couldn't be just sold to a second party right outside,
Madam Chairman, Commissioner Bianchi,
or additional party, I should say.
there are requirements that there not be any loitering on the property. And so patients or other guests will not be allowed to loiter on the property. There are cameras outside. People will basically be escorted off the property. You cannot consume it on the property. So all precautions will certainly be taken so that you cannot divert on site. Certainly, when anybody takes it to their personal residence, we certainly can't be responsible for the use.
Right. I'm just focused on this. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments for the applicant? I guess I had one. I noticed in the staff report that it referenced that that there'll only be perhaps 1 to 3 pounds of product on site at any one time. Is that a state or a local government mandate, or is that just a site-specific mandate?
Madam Chairman, we've gone back after it was raised at the last study session as to how it's delivered and how much should be held on site. We estimate, based upon demand levels, that there'll be approximately a once-a-month delivery of about 5 to 6 pounds. It will be delivered by an unmarked vehicle. It'll be in locked, tamper-proof totes. That kind of level of 6 to 7 pounds will be maintained on-site in an 800-pound safe, and that will kind of limit us to having more than once-a-month trip. If volume goes up, maybe there'll be 1 or twice visits a month.
Okay, so 5 to 6 pounds versus the 1 to 3 is in the staff report?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Powell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Does the state statute or standards identify the level of optics that the external cameras have to have?
Madam Chairman, Commissioner Powell, in fact, they do. They're very specific as to the size of monitoring, the number of images captured per second, and nighttime vision and daytime vision. They are very specific specifications.
Does that standard, the camera that's taking the pictures with that standard, will they be clear enough where you actually can see faces, license plate numbers, and have the ability to clearly identify somebody even in the black of the night?
I think they are intended to be magnified to a point that you can get adequate definition. At every transaction, at the point of sale, every transaction must be captured. They don't specifically require as to license plates, but we're certainly trying to give enough broad coverage to get as much information to help Gilbert PD as much as possible. Gilbert PD has reviewed the security plan, and they've been very cooperative. They understand potentially the kind of information they would like from us and the kind of assistance. They've indicated as we get closer to opening, they want to do a visual examination and provide any further refinements that might come up.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, thank you, Mr. Rodriguez. With that, we'll invite any member of the public who wishes to speak on this matter. I don't think I have any cards from anyone wishing to speak. Is there anybody out there that would like to discuss this item? Okay, seeing none. I assume there's nothing further that the applicant wishes to add, or staff, do you have anything further you'd like to add?
I would like to mention hours of operation are limited through the ordinance, 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. daily. So there'd be no activity after 6 p.m.
Great, thank you very much.
And that was going to be my question.
Oh, perfect. Okay, with that, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing and bring it back to the dais for discussion and possible motion. Anyone?
I think as far as discussion goes, we've wrestled with this for a while, and it takes a while to kind of get acclimated or comfortable with this subject. But I think when we look at this, when we look at the CHA boundaries, when we look at Gilbert as a whole, I think the location probably works well based off of the distances and the separation from other uses. It's met all the security requirements, and in my estimation, it's met the findings of fact as well. So, I wouldn't be opposed to opposing this.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Sippel?
I might just add to it, something of this nature is so legislatively driven as well that, they've got some of the confines that they need to stick within, and it seems to me, based on what I've read and what we've discussed, that they've met those, and so I am comfortable with this moving forward as well.
Thank you. Vice Chairman Peterson?
I think you know, based on everything that we've learned about medical marijuana over the past couple of years and dispensaries and sites and all the discussion that we've had that some of us have been able to have, it meets the findings. Am I comfortable with these dispensaries still? No, but it does meet the findings. Am I comfortable to hear that 40,000 medical marijuana cards have been given out already? No. I know that they're not given to legitimate people. I did a ride along a couple weeks ago with the Gilbert PD, and I know that they're not. And so that makes it, you struggle with that internally, but does it meet the findings? And it does. So I would have to support it for those reasons.
Okay, I guess what my thoughts are very similar in that we have guidelines and we have requirements, and the applicant meets those requirements. And so I have no issue with the request as it's presented before us today. So, Mr. Cavaney?
Maybe just one more thought. As I look at the site plan, I notice that there is a Phase 2 proposed, and I'm just perhaps curious what the thinking is there. As we get to lay out Phase 1 here, maybe there's a thought that we should look at what Phase 2 means.
I think there's a stipulation in the recommendation that if the applicant decides to increase or modify or develop Phase 2, that they're required to come back through the process. So we'll get a chance to have a second look at that. I think it's probably just for future growth.
Yeah, I have no other questions then.
Thank you. Okay, anybody want to make a recommendation or actual? Commissioner Bianchi?
I guess I'll move ahead with it. So I would move to make the findings met and approve UP 13-07 for the East Valley Patient Wellness Center. Request for a conditional use permit to allow medical marijuana dispensary at 988 South 182nd Place.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, I have a motion by Commissioner Bianchi, a second by Vice Chairman Peterson. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none, approved unanimously. Thank you very much. Okay, moving on to our administrative items of the public hearing. Item number 17, minutes. Consider approval of the minutes of the study session regular meeting of June 5th, 2013. I was not present at this meeting, so I'll recuse myself from this vote. But Commissioner Bianchi, do you have any recommended changes?
If there are no others, I would move for approval with the following changes: that on pages 2 and 4 of the study session, it states Chairman Fuller.
Oh. He got promoted in my absence. It's fabulous. Oh, Commissioner Ayler's here. Just in time.
Chairman, I do have a correction. The word CHAW, as we were just referring to for the medical marijuana facility, the word CHAW should be CHAA, not CHAW, anywhere through the minutes that for the study session for that night.
Good catch. Good catch. All right.
Any other changes? If there aren't, I would move for approval.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Oh, actually, I need to abstain. Sorry. I said aye. I have it. Okay. Welcome, Commissioner Ayler. We're on to communications. Agenda item number 18, which is report from chairman and members of the commission on current events. Well, we have a current event. We have a commissioner that was appointed to the commission, and we want to welcome him. Michael Cavaney, David, sorry. I don't know why I said Michael.
My brother.
Oh, is it? You must know the name. So welcome. And Commissioner Powell was also reappointed as well. So we're glad to have you.
And
Thank
yourself.
you.
And myself, yes. I'm lucky enough to be able to serve another 4 years. So thank you very much. Any other
I just
notes?
have one thing. On Saturday, July 20th, from 9:30 to 11:30 a.m. here at 50 East Civic Center Drive in the room upstairs, room 300, we'll be holding a new resident social for anybody that's new to the town of Gilbert, even if you've been here for a while and you want to see what new residents learn about. I will be there representing, I guess, the Planning Commission or boards and commissions, however you look at it, and we invite people out.
Great, thank you. Agenda item number 19, report from council liaison, and it looks like she's absent tonight. So we'll move on to agenda item number 20, report from Planning Services Manager Linda Edwards on current events.
Thank you, and welcome new commissioners, and welcome back, commissioners.
Thank you.
I'd also like to extend a thank you out, a shout out to Chris and Steve, who are our technical staff here this evening. Thank you for all your help and helping get us on track when we need it in the spur of the moment. 197 new single-family permits for the month of June 2013.
That's impressive.
Very, very impressive, considering the last few days have been slow. Just before July 4th always gets a little slow, which gives us a little breather, but 197. Many of us are wearing purple ribbons. They represent our support for the firefighters who lost their lives and the families that are still struggling and the firefighters that are still working hard to put out the fire. Some of our firemen and neighboring cities are volunteering their time. Fire in the Sky 4th of July event, 6 to 9 p.m. at Central Christian Church, July 4th. Everyone's welcome. At Town Council, the Bridges rezoning was approved along with TH Ranch. In both of those cases, they were final plats, and the Commission recommended rezonings for some development standards to allow product to move forward on existing plats. So that was successful. We do have a downtown new phone app. It's called the Heritage District phone app. And on there, you will find a page for project status. And we have listed some of our new projects that will be breaking ground very soon. We have a parking garage that will break ground in October and Heritage Marketplace in September. Very exciting for our downtown, along with some other street improvements, flashing beacon crossing, and new signals. Just letting you and the public know that there is very exciting things happening in our community, along with websites to check on the status, so you know where to park and how to get around and enjoy progress. So thank you.
Fabulous. Thank you so much. Okay, with that, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Okay. Does the commission need to take a 5-minute break?
Yes, please.
And then we'll reconvene as the study session.
Josh does.
Joshua definitely needs a few minutes to reset.
We are starting at 5. So we make it through 4.